So, hello everyone, and welcome to this meditation on Friday. And there's a little story from the ancient texts with the teachings of the Buddha, where the Buddha talks about his own experience of going off to practice on retreat before he was enlightened, and there were no retreat centers back then, so he was going into the forest. And at the end of this teaching, he says he still goes into the forest to practice, even now that he's fully awakened. And some people might think that the Buddha does so because, in fact, he's not awakened fully, and he needs to keep practicing. But it's not that way. He is fully awakened, but he goes into the forest to practice, to go on retreat for two reasons: for his own ease and well-being, and to be an example, to be an encouragement. Or what he says is out of compassion or care for future generations. And this idea that the Buddha would go and meditate because he wants future generations to meditate, meaning us. We're in that, and to a great extent, we're continuing something the Buddha started. Without the Buddha starting his teaching, starting his own practice, becoming awakened and teaching, there would be no Buddhism. And this particular gathering and teachings that we have and people would not exist in the way we know it now. And it survives down through the generations because from time to time there are people like the Buddha who would love who out of their love, their care, their friendship, their companionship, are saying, hey, meditate. It's good to meditate. It's for your own benefit and the benefit of the world to meditate. Go on retreat. Go on a short retreat. The short retreat right now from your home on YouTube. And this idea that there are people in the world who are their warmth, their friendship, their care, their maybe not thinking about each of you individually. They don't know you maybe, but they're there around you and extended with this wish for others, including you, to yes, please meditate. It's good. And so the call, the instructions, the suggestion, the thing that strikes me is that it's being offered with friendship, with the friendliness, with goodwill, not assertion, not demand, not expectation, but just out of a genuine kindness and care, compassion, warmth. A warmth perhaps in sharing our common humanity and the challenges of it, and how to meet those challenges here, meditating. So for today, in this meditation, I'd like to suggest, if this is available to you, that you meditate content or happy or inspired or touched by the fact that this teacher from 2,500 years ago, many people down through the ages, there's many people in the modern world, me right now, who out of care, out of love, out of inspiration, out of wanting to address the suffering of this world, are in a supportive way saying, hey, we're with you. Please meditate. Let's meditate together. You're not doing it alone. And maybe you, in your own way, your own example of meditating, are setting an example for the future. And you'll come to the point where you recognize you're doing it for yourself, your own ease and well-being. And also you're doing it to support future generations. In the simplicity of your dedication and action of meditating, independent of how well you think you're meditating. you're meditating with circle of support, and you are part of the circle to support future generations. May that idea, that image, support you to have a kind of inspired warmth or goodwill for being with yourself, being with your breath, being with your body, being here and now in this meditation. And with that, we'll have this meditation the rest of it be silent. Thank you. So then as we come to the end of this sitting, to imagine, if you will, that from the point of view, from the perspective of sitting quietly and calmly, that you can gaze upon the world kindly, that you can gaze upon the world with goodwill, and that for these few minutes, if you can not be troubled by the world, because you have something phenomenally wonderful to offer, something very much needed in this troubled world, to offer your kindness, your goodwill, your care, to be able to accompany the world with goodwill. Maybe so that it spreads into the world and into future generations the human capacity for metta, for kindness, for care. May all beings know that others wish them to be happy. May all beings know that others wish them to be safe. May all beings know there are people who wish them peace. May all beings know that there are people who wish them freedom. And may those people be us. May we go into the world wishing happiness and safety, peace and freedom. And may we contribute to that possibility. Thank you all. And thank you for maybe your patience or with the various technical difficulties we have with all the electronics we have here. But I think now we're set for the rest of the morning. So, in this fifth talk, I'm finishing the series on the poems of the elder nuns, the poems that are preserved, that are attributed to the first generations. And I say it in plural because it's often said to be the first generation of disciples of the Buddha, female disciples. But rather, I think they're probably composed over a longer period of time, maybe several hundred years. So those first generations. And I want to today begin by reading a little bit more from the introductory words I've written about these poems that I've translated. And then I'll read some of the poems that, for me, touches the warmth and friendliness and support with which the ancient nuns provided themselves or experienced that allowed them to do their practice. Um, so the enlightened women who are featured in the Therigatha represent the first generations of female Buddhists who contributed to establishing the spiritual foundation for succeeding generations of Buddhists of all genders. With few other surviving records of the first Buddhist women, the Therigatha provides an invaluable window into the lives and religious experience of these pioneers. Prior to becoming nuns, many had been wives and mothers. Some were widows, some the mothers of dead children, and one was a widow who had lost both her children, Patachara. A few of the nuns had been prostitutes and courtesans. Some had been poor, others had been wealthy daughters of royalty in high-ranking families. Some were old and weak, others were young in the prime of their lives. Two had already been contemplative renunciants before encountering the Buddha's teachings. No matter what their background, most of these women attained the ultimate goal of the Buddhist path. In fact, the attainment of full spiritual liberation is a predominant theme of the Therigatha. The importance of this experience, popularly known in English as enlightenment, is evidenced by the 40 different synonyms and descriptive words used to describe it. The most frequently used words having to do with are words having to do with freedom. That is, words that can be translated into English as being freed, well freed, released, liberated, fully released, emancipated, set free, attaining liberation, and being untied, unfettered. So it's remarkable. This whole these texts. And then, for many of the women in the Therigatha, being a nun included valued connections with other nuns. They had more senior nuns as their teachers. To receive teachings, Venerable Uttama and an unnamed nun approach a nun they trust. Venerable Vijaya, when she had no control of her mind, respectfully questioned a fellow nun for teachings. Venerable Chanda refers to the kindness of Venerable Patachara allowing her to go forth as a nun. 30 nuns who seemed to be a group practicing together expressed their lifelong honoring respect of Venerable Patachara for her liberating teachings. Venerable Sundari refers to her monastic teacher as the light of the Sangha, and states that she has attained awakening independence on her teacher. Having left domestic and family life behind, these nuns had community with each other. So this idea of this warmth and kindness and mutual respect of practicing together is one of the characteristics that I read when I read these texts. And this stands out most prominently in the first chapter. The book is organized in chapters with increasingly longer verses or poems. And the first chapter is poems that are of one verse. And one of the characteristics of these poems is that some of these is that the meaning of the name of the nun is there's a wordplay in the verse itself, in that poem that kind of plays with that or revokes it and brings it forth again. And but through these, literally in the poem, the woman is addressed directly in the second person, but the question is who's addressing the nun, and the most common theory is she's speaking to herself in the second person, and in another theory is that it's actually the Buddha speaking to her, and the third theory is that it's a fellow nun who's teaching her, encouraging her, or some way. But whatever it is, to me there's a feeling of this warmth and care and kindness that comes through it. And it starts from the first verse, where the woman is a elder nun who has attained peace from all passion, from all lust, and then she's told, "Sleep at ease, dear elder, wrapped in the robe you made." So just kind of, just encouragement, sleep well now. You've done your work, you become free, so now sleep at ease. Very simple, ordinary, but expression of warmth and kindness. The second poem is addresses Mutta, which her name means freed. Mutta, be freed from bondage, as the moon from an eclipse. With the mind set free, enjoy your food debt-free. The idea of eating or enjoying your food debt-free for a monastic is that they receive alms. They only eat what's given to them by the laity. And so they're a little bit in debt. They have something to return to them. And what they return to them is their practice. And they practice to the point of enlightenment, at which case we can enjoy it debt-free. And then there's punna, which means full. Punna, be full of good states, like the moon on a full moon night, full with insight, shatter the mass of darkness. So practice, please practice. But for me, there's this warmth that's playing with her name. Your name is freed. Be freed, please. Here's one whose name is Mitta. Mitta means friend. Mitta, having gone forth out of faith, delight in friends. By cultivating skillful states, attain peace from bondage, from attachment. So this idea again here is explicit. Delight in friends, the spiritual friendships that we have, that you can have. And here, this woman's name is Bhadra, and that means blessing. Bhadra, having gone forth out of faith, delight in blessings. By cultivating skillful states, attain unsurpassed peace from bondage. Here's another one whose name is Mutta, freed. And now she's speaking directly for herself. Well freed, very well freed. I am freed from 3 crooked things, from mortar, pestle, and crooked husband. I am freed from birth and death. What leads to becoming has been pulled out. Marriage and family life, being a wife and mother, was not necessarily a good thing in the ancient world. There was a lot of work, and sometimes it was kind of like servitude. Very different from our understanding of marriage and maybe in the modern world. And so she's celebrating being freed from maybe a very difficult husband. Here's one, this one doesn't necessarily directly have a word play or with her name, but Uttara, meaning supreme. Controlled in body, speech, and mind, having pulled out craving at its root, I've become calm, released, quenched. And this woman's name is Dhamma, so the Dharma. Weak, leaning on a stick, wandering for alms, limbs trembling. So, there was no medicine that we have today, Social Security, retirement homes. Um, that people who are monastics maybe had a monastery to live in, but they still had to go out and get food every day. And so weak, leaning on a stick, wandering for alms, limbs trembling, I fell to the ground right here. In seeing the drawbacks of the body, my mind was liberated. So here, old age, challenges, weak, not strong enough to stand up for herself. Something about falling. She could let go, maybe not depend on the body, maybe find an alternative even in her old age. And something in her mind got liberated. And this one is another one, a woman who, maybe I'll skip it. It's, but here, for the sake of time, here's another a woman who, similar, is actually almost the same. There's two verses. Now we're in this chapter 2, and so it's a little bit like the earlier one. Her name is Chitta, and Chitta in this context means shining, bright, or beautiful. And it has in it the idea, she's a monastic, turning over her bowl. And it seems to refer to the idea that a monastic can go out with their bowl for food, but if they turn over their bowl like this, they can't receive any offerings. It's like refusing something, no more of that. And in 2007, when and one of the times that the monastics in Burma stood up against the government, they walked through the streets with their bowls turned up so that people, the government officials, the military, couldn't make merit by making offerings to the monks. It was their protest. So she refers to this in her poem, perhaps as a kind of, as a metaphor. And a number of these things might be metaphor in this poem. She also talks about ascending the mountain. And I don't know in the ancient world, but in some later Buddhism, that ascending the mountain is also kind of going up on the path of practice to the top. Though quite emaciated, sick and weak, I, walking, leaning on a stick, have ascended the mountain. Having laid down my upper robe, turning over my bowl, and resting on a rock, the mass of darkness shattered. So here, turning over the bowl, I think it's a metaphor here for no longer taking in the bait of the world, the temptations of the world, no longer maybe taking in, receiving her own attachments, her own clinging, her own delusions, and no more. Something inside of her turned over. And some people experience enlightenment with a kind of feeling like something flips in the mind, something switches very quickly, and to turn over, and then life is different from then on, or something maybe turns over the bowl and the mind turns over and all the attachments drain out. And so there's one more here, time to stop. Her name is Samma, meaning peaceful, not attaining mental peace. So her name is peaceful, but not attaining mental peace, and with no control of my mind. 4 or 5 times I left my hut. But then, 8 nights ago, craving was abolished. By being devoted to vigilance in regard to all suffering states, by being mindful of all suffering states, I reached the destruction of craving and accomplished the Buddha's teachings. Accomplish the Buddha's teachings. So these poems over and over again show that these women in the ancient world could accomplish what the Buddha taught. You can also practice, and you have the warmth of community, even the ones you don't know. The nuns of the ancient world, they practiced for you as well, and they're there. The ancient nun teachers are still here. Their momentum, their memory through these ancient texts, what survives of them through these verses, that they're saying you can do it. Practice. And come and rest at ease. Find your peace. Find your freedom. So thank you very much. And then one announcement is that I'll be gone for the next 2 weeks. I'm going back to Norway for a little bit. My parents died in the last couple of years, and bring some of their ashes back home. So it'll be a touching visit. And I will be back in 2 weeks. And next week, Nikki Megafori will speak. And the following week, Ying Chen. And 2 wonderful teachers. And you'll be in good hands. Thank you.